Learning new technologies is fun, and sometimes it is essential for us to know them. I think that Redux is one of the most misunderstood libraries in this whole JavaScript ecosystem. And today I want to change that. I want to rebuild this Redux from scratch. The goal is to create a minimal viable product such that we will have storage, actions, reducers, which are the very soul of this Redux library. Hello friend, my name is Vladimir, and today I want you to join me in this adventure where we will be understanding the tool by building it. What is Redux? Redux is basically a library that updates the properties within some object and doing it in an immutable way. It uses those actions and reducers as a tools. They use them as a tools to successfully perform this updating of the properties. Everything is object related. Okay, now I'm going to address this workflow. This is how Redux performs. It takes the value, it performs some operation on that value. The result of that is going to be stored somewhere, and at the very last, it's going to attach next state as previous state. Okay, just try and memorize this workflow because it is essential. On this diagram, this tab, we have three tables, and they are going to represent JavaScript objects because key value, and key value. Basically, we are talking about objects in this case. Okay, now I'm going to start up. I'm going to start and doing some things. I'm going to create a property called age. And I'm going to set the initial value as 25. This is the state. Now I'm going to go ahead and create on this object, fn object, a key of age, and as a value, I'm going to have a function reference. And inside of that function, I'm going to have something like this. This is inside of the body of function. What it does, it takes this 25, adds, oh sorry, it's not this one, it's actually this one. Yeah, now we have access to this 25, we add 2 to it, and the result will be stored over here. So 27, age as a key, and that is it. This is Redux. I'm going to create another example with a key name, name. The value is going to be Vladimir. This function object, I'm going to declare or to set name function reference. It's going to have this within the body. What it does, concatenates name with the Vladimir. The result is going to be stored over here. So name, colon, space, Vladimir. Here is going to be the same key. This is Redux again. So age, name, name. And this is the proper time to address these read-only and write-only statements. What does it mean? It means that from this object over here, we can only copy the values. Then we can perform some operation and we are going to store the result somewhere else. In this case, it's going to be the next state. So this is read only, this is write only. We cannot take the value, perform the operation, and store the result back. This is not doable. This is mutability, and Redux is anti-mutability. This is the way to achieve immutability. So take the value, perform operation, store the value somewhere else. This is what immutability is. Okay, I had to mention that before I move on because Redux, for the most part, advocates immutability in every single step, even at its very core, which makes sense, right? Now I'm going to address the scenario where the Redux would not allow us to perform some task. For example, let's have surname and cost of as a key. Inside this fn object, I'm going to declare this guitar and function reference, that within the body of that function is going to ask for this value over here. So prev state surname. This will not work. This guitar and surname do not match, meaning that this function will not have the scope of this value of cost. It will not have the scope. It will also not have the scope of this name, this Vladimir, nor the age. As well, name over here cannot access the scope of age and surname. It can only take the value of the key that is defined over here. So age can take only age, and that is it. Great. So we have to fix this. Surname. Now this function have a permission to access this value over here. And now this can be executed only now. So surname is going to be cost of and surname as a key. That's it. I'm going to move this because we don't need it right now, because this is the proper way of how Redux actually does the thing. After everything has been performed, every single of these function body has been executed. So for the age, for the name, for the surname, and the fields have been updated from this into this, we are going to address the final step. So far, we have been talking about taking the values, performing some operation, and storing the values, but never this. And this is actually the simplest. Now let me show you what it does. We go here, we delete this object, and we move this object over here. Okay, now I'm going just to create this empty object over here, and we are done. Redux is done. Okay? And you have been probably asking, where are actions? Where are reduces? The very thing that you have been working with Redux, you have been using all these concepts, but I have never mentioned them. Well, these are the tools that actually help you with storing the data in this manner. Okay, so first, if you understand this workflow, if you understand how this section, this part of the Redux works, you will, with a great ease, understand what these concepts are. But these cannot be explained if you don't understand what this thing is. This has been the theoretical part of the project. Now we can move on to the coding section. First, I'm going to declare two functions. Function age is going to be empty for now, and function first name empty as well for now. Also, we're going to be declaring two states. Prev state, that is going to be an object that contains age with an initial value of 25. And the first name, that is going to be my name, or Vladimir. Now I have to declare next state as well, but it's going to be empty for now. Calling two functions, and then magic happens. So at this stage, we are going to be visiting these two functions, and we are going to perform some tasks. 3 tasks. So first one, take the value. Variable value is going to be this one, 25. How do we get there? With state that has the same key name as the function name. Then perform an operation. We are adding just 2 to it. And then at the end we are going to be storing the result in the next state. Next state with the same keyword, so with the keyword of age, is going to have the value that we have just created. Okay, now I'm going to copy everything inside and paste over here. And let's see, we have to change this first name keyword over here, and over here we are going to just do this, name and plus value. Okay, and by this stage, by this line, this next state is going to be populated with these new values, and we are going to check it right now. Console log previous state, and we are going to log this next state. Okay, let's see the results. Opening the terminal, in debug console, yes, we have 25 and 27 after this transformation of data, after this line, okay? Alright, so combine function. This is probably the most important function in the whole Redux library. And the reason is because, well, I'm going to show you. This is our code for now. Now we have only age and first name function and previous state with some initial values, right? Now I'm going to copy and paste combine function. And here it is. It is essentially, it is very simple function that should be basically calling both these age and first name functions, and within them, inside them as a parameters, we are going to be passing these values over here. So 25 in age, and inside this first name is going to be Vladimir. And in order for this combined function to work, it expects one object and this previous state over here. So first I'm going to handle this function object. This is an object that will basically take key as age, and if you remember, it's going to be a function reference. It's from that diagram that I have been showing you previously. And this is going to be first name, and as an argument, as a value, I'm passing down function reference first name. Okay, so we are inside of these combine functions. We are iterating this object. And the goal, main goal, is basically this line of code. Let me show you what it actually does. In the first iteration, it calls the age function, and inside of it, it passes one argument. That is going to be prev state that has age. This. And on the second iteration, once this is done, it's going to call first name function, and as an argument, it's going to pass first name key. Okay? And basically, what we need to do now is to call this function. I'm just going to call it below. So it's going to be combine function that takes that one parameter, that is hash function, and previous state. That is it. Now I'm going to save this, and let me see what we can do. I can actually set an debugger breakpoint and observe what happens within this loop over here. So let's run it. Okay. So I'm going to ignore this. Actually, I'm going to show you this function name. This is an array of age and first name as a elements inside, and we are setting this next result object that I'm going to be talking about. And let's skip a couple steps below. All right. So this is a function. This is age function. And inside of it, we are passing 25. So at this line of code, we are actually calling programmatically this age function, right? So let's go a couple of steps. This is not important for now. Now, second iteration, we are entering the loop, and we have first name. First name is the key. Let's couple steps more. And at this time we have function first name. Inside of it we are passing Vladimir. Okay? And this is calling this first name function programmatically. However, I have one thing to pinpoint and actually to prove. So I have to prove that we are actually passing these values over here. I'm going to reference this param and console log, so we get a better picture of it. And I'm going to console log age and param. This is going to be 25, by the way. Going to copy and paste it over here. But first let me stop this debugger and just swap this over here. Okay. So now when we call these functions, I'm going to, well, let's see what we are getting. Running the code again. Now I'm going to step into, and now we are at this function call. And we can see that we have 25 and just console log it's 25 now for this function. And let's go through again. Now on the second iteration, we are calling the second function, which is the first name. Okay, now we have, whoops, an error. Oh yeah, I forgot to reference the parameter. And now parameter is there. I'm running it again. It's 25 for the first function. Step into. Now it's first name and Vladimir. Okay, so we are automatically calling both of these functions because of this hash functions object, and inside of them we are putting these values accordingly. And this is great because we are basically touching actions as well. This is going to turn into action, but this is the most important part for now. So this is the most important function. Now I'm going to return something from this function. So I'm going to return param plus 2. And from this, I'm going to return name plus param. And let's see what happens now. I'm going to step into this whole function, combine function once again. So save the file, F5, and let's see. First function is called. Now, okay, we are returning 27. Return value 27. So that means that this next result for name has 27. And we are creating, basically, in this object, a key name of age with a value of 27. This next step, let me go into this next step, is actually a flag. It questions whether there are some changes within this next result and the pre-result table. And if there are some changes, then we are setting this into true. Okay, good so far. This is set to true because there are some changes. Previously it was 25, now it's 27. Going into again. So this is for the second function. Now we have this value over here, which is going to be string concatenation of name and Vladimir. And in this line, we are creating, well, another property in here, right? So by the end of this stage, we have this next result object that has age 27 and first name Vladimir, name Vladimir over here, you can see. This is true, of course, because there are some changes, and we are exiting this loop over here. And this is the very last step. If this has changed is true, if there are some changes, we are taking these next results, so all these properties, and we are setting them over here, right? This is what it does. There are some changes, just previous state equals next result. Let's step into a bit more. Okay, I'm going to hover over this previous state, and let's see what we have. So previously, before running these combined functions, we had 25 and Vladimir, and now this object has age 27 and first name name colon Vladimir over here. Quick intermission. Please like and subscribe and join the Discord channel. Link in the description. Thank you. Before we move on with the actions and the reducers, we have to address one small adjustment regarding to the code that we have. And that is a handling prev state on the global context. Let me show you what I mean. Over here in our code, we have previous state that is object that contains initial values, but its scope is within this global context, meaning it's very possible for some part of the code to mutate this state directly. So all you have to do is basically do something like this, prev state, and then insert a key and then some values. So this is not a good practice. So we are going to address it right now. Okay, so I'm going to remove this over here. And it's basically a variable declaration that still resides within this global context, but that is going to change very soon. And within this combined function, we are going to set the initial value to this previous state over here. So this is basically that. And from here, we are going to set the initial values within these two functions. So age and first name function is going to have a set initial value within this parameter section over here. This is going to be 25, and for this it's going to be Vladimir. Okay, that's it. So if you don't know, this syntax is basically if this param is going to be undefined, then set the initial value to 25. And basically it becomes 25 plus 2 and returns 27. Same thing as the previous thing that we have done. And to prove it, I'm going just to console log previous state. And maybe set a breakpoint over here. Save the file. Let me just check if everything is fine. Okay, so we still have previous state in global context. Okay. I'm running the debugger. Okay, and now let's see previous state. Okay, it contains 27 and name Vladimir. Actually, I can resume this debugger. So it's the same thing as the previous result that we have, but these values are more scoped. Actions. Well, to be honest, I don't like that word in this context. I like to call them instructions because that is what they are. They instruct how and in what manner a function should treat the data. Should it subtract? Should it add, multiply, concatenate the string? Whatever. These are what instructions do. If we go and take a glimpse of these two functions, we can see that there is only one instruction in their body. Very simple stuff. So in this case, we are always adding 2. And in this case, we are always concatenating name with this initial value, Vladimir, right? Now, it would be nice if we could expand that a bit more. Let me show you what I mean. Let's introduce instruction over here. And this is going to be same for the first name function as well. So both of these functions receive this string. This instruction is going to be string. Now, if let's say if instruction is a string called sub, then what we are going to do, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to return the parameter -2. And if the instruction is going to be add, it's going to be +2. And if none of these get satisfied, we are going to return just whatever this is. And I'm going to do something simple with this first name function over here. So over here, I can set an instruction if the instruction is conc name, then we are going to return the same thing. And if not, if we don't get this instruction, we are just going to return param, so Vladimir, right? Okay. So these instructions have to come from some place. And there is only one place that calls these functions. If you remember, it's going to be this line over here. This is the initial value. This is where we are going to be passing down the instruction. So instruction, I can spell. And because this is undefined, it doesn't exist anywhere, we are going to pass it in this combine function, which is called down here. So this is the place, this place over here is the place where we are setting the instruction. For example, add. Okay, now what am I going to do? I'm going to place a breakpoint over here, save the file, and I'm going to, well, just run. And let's see what happens. Let's see what we get. So we are calling the age function. It's going to be undefined, this parameter, and instruction is add. So over here in this parameter list over here, we get this add string, and parameter is 25, which means we are checking which of these clauses have this add. It's this one, and we are going to enter this section over here. And we are returning 27. Very simple. Now on the second iteration, what are we going to get? So, I mean, this is the first iteration. However, the second iteration in this list down here, that's what I meant. It's going to be this function, and it's, as you can see, it's the same add function. Add string gets passed into this function. And because this does not satisfy this instruction code, it's going to return just Vladimir. And at the end, we can see what we get. It's 27, and this remains unchecked. Now I'm going to implement this concat. I mean, I'm going to call it, not implement, because it's already implemented. I'm going to call it concat name. I'm going to save it and run. Let's see what we get. Okay, I'm going to skip the age because I know it's going to be unchecked. However, if we get into this function, first name, this is going to hit because we have instruction called concat name. And we are returning name this. End of the program, what we have. Now 25 remains unchecked, and the first name got concatenated with the string prefix over here. Now what I can do, I'm just going to call it again. And this time, so first time I'm going to concatenate this, and on the second iteration of this main program, I'm going to increase this by 2. Running the program, What do we get? Okay, let me close this breakpoint and run again. Let's see what we get. It's 27 and concatenated string. Okay, it's very simple. I'm going to do it once again. Save and run. 29, right? Yeah, 29. Let me move on. Okay. Looking at our function bodies, it seems that we are pretty much limited in terms of what we can do with the data. In this section over here, we can only add or subtract by 2. And in this case over here, we can only concatenate a string name. Well, this is pretty much useless, right? I want to be something more dynamic. I want this to be 7 or 5 or whatever it is. So I have to write something down. So first part 1 was the operation. This was this sub or add or concatenate section. Okay, now let's introduce part 2, that is going to be data. And let's see what we can do. So I'm going to pass over here. Let me just delete these two functions, function calls. And over here, I can make an object. Key value pairs that are going to be like this. Operation going to be add, and data is going to be 10, for example. Now I have to modify this section over here. So this is now going to be more dynamic. This is now an object as well as this one. And over here we have operation. If the operation is sub, then we are going to reduce the 25 from the whatever gets passed as a data from that object. And it's going to be same if the operation is add and param plus that data, which in this case is going to be 10. And for the concat, this has also to be the same operation. And over here, we are going to be concatenating some data with this param over here. Let me set a breakpoint, save the file, and I'm going to run. Let's see what we have. So we are calling h function, undefined value, and an object that gets passed. I'm going to step into function, and over here we can see that we have an object as an instruction with data and operation add. Let's see what happens. Okay, so operation add is add. This means we are entering over here. We are adding 10 to 25, and we are returning, let me skip, we are returning 35. Okay, let's see what happens with the second function. Let's step into it. It gets past the same object, so it's again add and 10. And because this doesn't get satisfied, we are just keeping it. There we go, we are returning Vladimir. And at the end, we get 35 and first name Vladimir. Now let's see if I alter something over here. What happens? Conc name data example space. I'm running it. Age function. Well, nothing is actually going to be fulfilled, so we are going to get just the initial value over there. And in the next function that I'm going to go into, this is over here. So we are having this example and concat name. This is going to be fulfilled, right? And we are going to have this 25 with the first name example Vladimir. So this gets executed over here. Let me copy this, paste. Say this is going to be add. And over here it's going to be 100. And I'm going to remove this debugger. I'm going to save, and can you guess what's going to happen? This is going to be 125, and this is going to be the same. I'm running it. There it goes. You know what? I'm going to do it once again. And I'm going to concat again the same thing. See what happens. 125, and the first name is example Vladimir. And this is exactly what actions are. Instructions, some object that gets passed into the function, and function handles it. That's it. Don't overthink. These are actions. Okay. So what are closures? Say what are closures? The closure is the method that enables you to encapsulate some data. There are two ways to store some data within JavaScript, and usually it is via a var keyword. So the permanent data, so to speak, is the variable that has the longest lifespan, and it is defined within this global context. So var value is going to be 21, for example. So it has the longest lifespan. And it means basically until the end of the program, this value is going to be there. However, if we define some variable within some function, let's say function A is going to have a variable ll0, its lifespan is going to be until this function returns something. Once it returns, the data gets garbage collected, okay? And that is the way it's supposed to be. Variables declared within this global context represent danger because they are prone to be mutated even by accident. We can actually access it from any function, no matter how nested it is, how deep it goes inside. Accidents can and usually will happen. And it's not, maybe not within this simple program that we have, but with some bigger, well then yes, of course. It would be nice if we could somehow encapsulate or store the data inside this function, this one, and access it and manipulate this data when we need, so we don't pollute this global context over here. And we are doing this with closures. Basically, in JavaScript, to create a closure, you have to return a function. So return a function or an object. So a non-primitive value. And let me start with the function. Now I'm going to create this function. And this function inside of its body, it will have two statements. The first one is to add 2 to this variable over here. Oh, not 2, let's say 5. And the second statement is going to be console log this ll variable over here. I'm going to call this from the global context as a result. So let's say variable res as a result. I'm going to call this function. And because this function gets called and we are expecting something as a return, we have this function reference over here. So it basically becomes this plus this data ll because of the closure. We have this ll of 0 plus this function over here. And what does that mean? Well, let's just first call this and let's invoke it. Let me run this program. Run. What we get is 5. Now let's run again. It's going to be 10. So we are storing this seemingly temporary data. And this is closure in the nutshell. Okay. Now I'm going to create a closure using an object. Let me just delete these two for now. And this can go as well. And inside of this a function, I'm going to declare two functions. Function add, it's going to take this ll and add 10 to it. Ll plus 10. Second function get value. I'm going to console.log this ll over here. And as a return, do you remember what we have to return? Return an object. And inside this object, I'm going to return these references to these two functions. So I'm going to say add and get value. This means that I have more control of this function. I actually get to choose which one of these two functions are going to be invoked and in what manner. So let's say res dot add. Now I have this add, which is reference to this function. This function increments 10. Let's do it again. So now it's going to be 20. And now I'm going to res dot get value and run this program. What will we get? 20. So this is not anymore data that gets erased forever. So it actually gets stored in the memory because of this return statement that is object or a function. Our goal is to create these couple of statements and basically make things work. So we need to make a store. Then we are going to dispatch some actions or instructions in our case. That's how we call them. And in the end, we are just going to log whatever state there is. First, we need closures because we want to encapsulate this prev state over here, which resides within this global context. This function that I'm going to create, its purpose will be to encapsulate the data such that we don't contaminate this global space anymore. Here's the function. Let me scroll down here. there. So we have two methods within this function. The first one will be to for setting a new values, and one over here for logging whatever this state is over here. And in the end, we are just going to return this object with the references to these methods. And if you remember, it's basically the same thing as this example over here. So we have some value that we are going to store. We perform some data manipulation. We are logging whatever that data is over here. It's basically the same thing. Within this dispatch function, we are going to be calling our function over here, this combine function. That function, its responsibility is to get the previous state, perform some data manipulation, and stores the result back into this current state over here. It's the same thing as this relationship over here. So combine function takes this previous state, performs some magic, and stores the result back into this previous state over here. And we are going to create almost exact thing as this combine function. Let me show you. Here, small typo. Okay, let me address this really quick. So we have two parameters. One is going to be this current state over here, and the second one is going to be instruction. Instruction is basically this object over here. Okay, and we are passing these two values inside of this function. So this will be returned as a closure function. So we are actually holding this reference as a function. Current state is being passed here as a previous state, and the instruction is passed as, well, string instruction. So this is a function that expects two parameters. Parameters that we are going to be passing from down there. And these are simple. Like I have said, this is going to be just previous state. If nothing has been passed, an empty object is going to be created. However, you're probably asking why this function is going to be converted into closure when there is no data to be stored or pulled from this scope over here. And that is a great question. And the reason for this is because in the original code, source code, there are some code states declared inside here. Something like that, whatever. It's not important. And the reason, let me delete it. And the reason is I didn't include it because it's not necessary for the core functionality. So I'm going to leave this as it is so I can keep things simple and on the track. Okay? Okay, after everything is set and done, I'm going to clean up the code. So as you remember, we don't need these two anymore. We have combine functions. So combine function takes this argument over here. So this is going to be the same. Hash function gets inside of here. And we are creating a result and passing this function over here. Inside this, and if nothing gets declared, it's just going to be, because it's not in our case right now, as a previous state, previous state, current state is going to be undefined. So it's going to be the same behavior as this thing over here. So this would be the last lines of code. Let me save it and run the code. Debug console. There we go. First operation, subtract 5 from 25. And the second operation is going to be concat name and attach this first name over here. That's it. Reducers. Let's talk about reducers. So we are at the end of the video, yet I still haven't mentioned reducers at all. But little did they know, we have already built them and used them. We just didn't name them. What are reducers in Redux? Well, reducers in Redux are just the functions that take state or data and actions or instructions as the parameters, and they return the result of those actions being performed on the data or state. So we have reducers, age and first name functions. These are reducers, and I purposely did not want to name them early on because I don't like the word reducers as well as the word action. So I waited until the end and I decided to name them at this stage of the lesson. Names are not that important anyway. Well, this is the end of our journey for now. Tell me, how did you like it? Anyway, I won't be taking your time anymore, so I have to let you go. Bye for now.